Welcome back. If you're just joining us, you are now watching part 2 of tonight's 3-part show. We've just finished part 1, where we both did a tasting of Woodford Reserve Distillers Select Bourbon. And Ken, I don't know about you, but I've already said it. This is my old faithful. When in doubt, I always turn to the Woodford. How's it treating you?
It's treating me well. I'm going to go ahead and top my glass off as we get into this, but I'm feeling pretty much the same way as you are about it. It's well done.
Yeah, and I'm just going to give you a quick disclaimer. I'm going to have to watch myself. This one could get me into trouble. It's a little too easy drinking. So before we jump into tonight's episode, I want to remind everyone, please like and subscribe. Click that little bell at the top of your page so you don't miss any future shows. And be sure to leave us your questions and your comments in the comment section below. You can also email your questions to us at ask@bourbonbros.tv. And if your question doesn't suck, we might even read it on a future episode.
Or even if it does suck, at least for the short term, we might review it.
Yes, as Ken likes to say, whether it sucks or not, we're probably still going to read it because we'll just be thrilled to have a question. And so with that out of the way, let's get into tonight's discussion of Sons of Anarchy. We are on Season 1, Episode 2. The episode is titled Seeds. And here we go again, Ken. Original air date, September 10, 2008.
Not a new show.
No, it is not.
I'll say it again. 12 years. I can't believe that. It's exactly 12 years, right? Last month.
Yeah, last month. So 12 years. Wow. The show is written by Kurt Sutter. I know that it's his show. He's the creator, but as you will soon find out as we move into some future episodes, they are not all written by Kurt Sutter. So that's why I call that out. Should I start with a short synopsis?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. So let's see. We'll start with Deputy Police Chief David Hale is introduced to the show and discovers the bodies of 2 undocumented immigrants under the ruins of Sam Crow's burned down arms warehouse, whom Tig was also harboring in exchange for sexual favors, which we'll get into. Police Chief Wayne Unser, who's retiring soon, or is he, is also introduced and promises to keep Hale off Sam Crow's trail if the club protects one of his delivery trucks. In order to distract the police for long enough to dispose of the bodies, Jax and Halfsack dig up some recently buried cadavers to dump in public. The gang hijacks Unser's truck and then blackmails him into delaying his retirement until Sam Crow can rebuild its gun-running operation. Tara accuses Gemma of supplying Wendy with the needle that almost killed her. Opie mulls the option of returning to Sam Crow in the face of mounting bills. Tig and Bobby retrieve the immigrants' bodies and have them cremated. Ken.
Yeah.
How'd you like this episode?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good summary of the episode. I liked it. There was a lot going on. I thought it was well done, well written. It was entertaining. We got introduced to some new characters. Again, this is the second episode, so we'll get into talking about who we met, but they're laying the foundation for the characters, which, I liked watching. I've seen this several times before, and it never gets old.
I agree. Yeah, and I would say the series as a whole, this is episode 2. It's not quite found its stride yet. And I think it's easier if you've already seen the series before, but if you're truly watching this for the first time and this is episode 2, it hasn't really found its groove yet, but it is, I think, very quintessential of what you can expect in a Sons of Anarchy episode from the standpoint of there's some humor, there's some violence, there's some character development, there's some drama. It has all of the key ingredients, and like you, I rather enjoyed the episode.
Yeah, I mean, they blow some stuff up, or, there's some action there. Actually, I don't know if they blow anything up, but they do. There's a lot of action going on there.
So let's jump in. What topic would you like to dig into first? There's so much here in this episode we could talk about, but where would you like to start?
Well, let's start at the beginning there. The episode opens. Jax is working on a motorcycle there at Teller Motors. Bobby rolls up on a bike. He's got some muffins. He's got some snacks for they're going into a meeting. I believe Bobby makes the comment.
Got the good shit. There we go, boys. Terminado sugar, organic flour, no processed shit. Not that any of it give it to him.
Which is interesting coming from him because he's not in the best of shape.
Right. Yeah, and again, you think about these outlaw bikers, rough and tough, and you've got Bobby coming in with, muffins. And he makes a point to talk about, right? It's turbinado sugar, and as you said, organic flour and no processed stuff. And again, the rest of the guys really could care less. Like it could have all been crap, and they were still going to eat it.
Let's eat them. Mm-hmm. So at the beginning there, they're going into their meeting, and Clay's handing out money, right, from the sale of the guns. Yeah, this is where we get two church sessions in the episode. You get one at the beginning and you get one midway through. Mm-hmm. But he's handing out the money, and he doesn't give any money to Opie because he wasn't around for it. So he gets passed by. And Juice informed Clay that Hale was going to be delivering a warrant to search the warehouse that burned down.
That's right.
So all that kind of happens quickly.
Yes, it does happen quickly. And even the scene where Opie doesn't get paid, they're not overt. Like if you weren't paying attention, you could miss it. You really kind of pay attention to it. And it really is subtle, but a very key point in this episode that comes up later, which we'll talk about. But you mentioned that Juice informs Clay that Hale has a warrant to search the warehouse. Mm-hmm. We have actually two new characters introduced in this episode, right? We have Deputy Chief David Hale, right, who has the warrant, and you have Chief Wayne Unser, both of which are recurring characters on the show, or will become recurring characters on the show. So it's probably worth taking a minute to talk about them as well.
Absolutely. That's for sure. I didn't think about that. They are brand new characters. Let's start with Hale.
So what you learn as you watch the episode, and we won't kind of take you play by play, but I think the short of it is Hale is not on the take. He does not like the Sons of Anarchy. Chief Unser, on the other hand, is on the take and protects the Sons of Anarchy. And so you're in a situation where, Unser has been diagnosed with cancer, we learn. He's going to retire. Hale knows this and is just waiting for the day when Unser retires. Hale will become chief, and then he's taken the club down. Like that is his primary mission, number one, as soon as he takes over as chief, right? And so that's essentially what you learn early on in this show.
Yeah, it's obvious. He wants to take the Sons down.
Yes. And in this particular episode, he is the one that, or I believe it was actually one of his guys that actually opened up and discovered the two immigrants that were burnt in the warehouse fire.
Holy shit.
Jesus Christ.
A little bit later, we're going to talk about why those bodies are important, but let's just say that Hale finding those bodies is not great for the club. I also love the little scene where Hale comes up next to Jax at the stoplight.
On the motorcycle.
Yes. And Hale basically is telling Jax,
Chief Unser's retiring at the end of this month. I'll be stepping into those shoes. Unser's always had a look the other way policy with the Sons of Anarchy.
Unser's a lazy drunk.
I will not look the other way, Jax.
And Jax just shrugs it off, like basically, do what you got to do.
Yep, that's exactly what he did.
So let's talk a little bit about Unser before we move on, because I think these two characters are not only, I think, critical for this particular episode, but they're not just a guest star, one and done. Like, we're going to see these characters again. I love Unser.
Yeah.
He's just a great character.
Very likable.
Yes. And did you ever see the HBO series Deadwood?
No, I did not.
Great series. And the actor that plays Unser was another great character in Deadwood. And I think that was where I first saw him. And so when he showed up in episode 2 of Sons of Anarchy, I was immediately excited because he's just a great actor and plays great characters. But as we said, he has cancer, right? It's a chief, but he has cancer.
Right, and his wife wants him to retire as well. So there's some pressure there for him to step down. And Hale is the guy that's going to be taking over the reins. Right.
So for Sam Crow, this is not good, right? Because Hale has been Unser has been a layer of protection for the club. And so if Unser retires and Hale takes over, that's a whole nother set of problems now they've got to deal with. And Unser also has, in addition to his day job as chief of Charming Police, he has a trucking company, right? And so you see that Unser informs Clay that he has cancer, right? He's going to be retiring. But he also offers to Clay, because he knows they're hurting for money because the warehouse blew up, that he's got an upcoming route. He's been having some of his trucks hijacked, and so he's offered to pay the club to escort the shipment to make sure it doesn't get hijacked.
Right.
So we'll get into what happens with that escort in a few minutes, but the thing that really kind of stood out to me is Unser sees himself as a friend to Clay and Jax and the club.
There's a lot of history there. You can feel it, and we're in episode 2.
Yeah, it's not a situation where he is doing it because he's scared, or things kind of got a little deeper. Like, he truly likes them and is willingly trying to help them. And not in a way that is intended, I think, to be dirty. Like, you like Unser. He's a very likable guy, right? Even though he's quote unquote on the take.
Right.
So I'm excited to have Unser as part of the show. I thought it was a great introduction for him in this episode. We'll talk a little bit more about him as he kind of connects with some of the storylines. But what else did you like about this episode?
Well, I think the plot of Seeds, or episode 2, is built around the 2 bodies that were burnt and left at the warehouse, and how we deal with those bodies. But as some background, Tig early on confessed to Clay that he was hitting them. So he was having some form of sexual relations with those 2 women. It's concerning for Clay.
And I loved how he said,
both of them?
Oh, yeah. Kind of a taco twofer thing.
Yeah, it's taco twofer. That's Tig's, his humor is
yes.
Yeah, I love his character, but the concern,
that whole back and forth with him and Clay was fantastic.
Yeah, it really was. But the takeaway is that Clay's concerned, the club's concerned that his DNA is all over the DNA database and potentially all over these women. So they don't want these bodies getting taken for evaluation, because that'll put that'll put them at the warehouse, and they'll connect it with the guns and everything. So that kind of cues up church, the first session of church, where they're talking about what to do. And Tig comes up with the idea of, hey, we got to get a distraction. Well, actually, Clay might have brought up the distraction. We need a distraction to keep the crime scene investigators from showing up there.
Only one thing is going to stop that Lodi forensics team from getting to our warehouse, and that's another murder in Lodi.
Yeah. So initially, like, the discussion was, who are we going to kill?
Mm-hmm. And Tig had it all figured out.
Yes, he promoted basically killing a couple of the Nords.
Yes, and dumping their bodies in Lodi.
Yes. So I think he referred to it as killing two birds with one crow.
Right.
And it was Jax who again said,
"Hey, what if I could do this without spilling blood?"
And you can just see Clay bristle at that suggestion.
Like, I'll entertain this, but he didn't like it initially, right?
Yeah, so he's like, all right, well, what's your idea? And so Jax lays it out, and even Chibs is like, I like that.
That's pretty good.
That's smart. And so they ultimately decide to let Jax run with it. But yes, to your point, Clay was kind of like, don't make me regret this.
Mm-hmm. So we don't have to get into that now, because we could. I'm sure we'll talk about that later. But that was the takeaway there, is that Tig comes clean. They come up with an idea of how to handle it, what needs to happen, and then we kind of switch scenes. So what thought jumped out at you, or what scene jumped out on your end that you think is worth talking about here?
Well, it's not one that I would say is action-packed or comedic, but I do think it is very important to the overall storyline and the series as a whole. And we learned in the pilot that Tara, who's had a previous relationship with Jax, left Charming and has come back and works at the hospital. And you're seeing all the dynamics of her relationship with Jax and Gemma, and reconciling all the reasons that made her leave with now being back. And you get to see different aspects of that throughout the episode, but you're seeing, like, there is a short scene with her and Jax where you could see, like, Jax is still smitten with her. Mm-hmm. Right.
There's chemistry there.
Yes. And you could see that Tara is wanting to go back there, but at the same time trying not to, and to keep that distance. And you can see that internal struggle. So you can see the conflict in terms of her feelings about Jax. And, you know, she's sitting there like, you've just had a newborn baby. Your ex-wife is, 2 doors down. So she's not wanting to get involved, but you can definitely tell there are feelings there. And then on the other hand, you've got Gemma, who I think it's pretty safe to say, not thrilled that Tara's back in town.
Not at all.
And again, I love the dynamic that Tara knows who Gemma is. She knows how far Gemma will go. Mm-hmm. She's a tough lady. And Tara kind of shows Gemma that she's not going to take her shit. Mm-hmm. Right. So there's a little bit of this, Tara trying not to let Gemma know that she has any power over her, and Gemma trying to exert power over her. And so they're kind of going back and forth. Tara lets it, basically tells Gemma that she knows Gemma was the one that gave Wendy that syringe loaded with heroin. Mm-hmm. And so then Gemma immediately kind of goes into the mode of, well, what are you going to do about it?
If I were a cop, I'd call that motive.
Well, thank God you're only a doctor.
And we'll see what Wendy says when she comes out of detox. Or maybe I'll bounce my theory off of Jack's, see where he lands on it.
There's a lot going on there from the standpoint of, like, this is Jax and his mother, and Tara loves the son and doesn't like the mom, and vice versa. Jax likes Tara, Gemma doesn't. And you know that's going to be a dynamic that at some point boils over.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious to see where it goes.
Right. And at the hospital, I don't know, in that scene, Jax, I don't know if you caught it, but Jax ends up bedside and he's sitting next to Wendy. You know, based on everything that's happened and the fact that they've been separated for a year, him sitting there holding her hand kind of threw me. But he's got this look on his face like, why the hell am I here, right? Like, what? Like, very confused look. And then it kind of cuts. I don't know if you caught that.
Yeah, and I interpreted that look as the conflict between, he obviously has feelings towards Tara,
mm-hmm.
but he also just had a child with Wendy.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's seen Wendy as now a mother, but he's also seen her as totally broken. And I think to some degree he feels a little responsible for it, right? So I think there's just all this conflict. Like, one moment I need to be there for her, and the next moment, like, what the hell am I doing? She's a train wreck. I should get as far away from her as I can.
Right.
And yeah, I think that's just, he doesn't know what to do about that.
Yeah, yeah, he was confused. He's just doing some thinking there.
Yeah, but I just want to see where this is all going to go, and again, it's what I would call a small couple of scenes in this episode, but I think it's laying the foundation for something that would be a more critical plot line in future episodes.
Mm-hmm.
So
for sure,
excited to see where it goes.
Mm-hmm.
We've got time for one more, Ken. Give me one more aspect of the show you'd like to talk about before we move on.
Well, moving from the what they've decided to do, how they decided to handle getting the bodies out of the hole, they had to produce 2 other bodies, right? So they decide to go to the mortuary or the morgue, where they have a connection. His name's Skeeter. So the character Skeeter is introduced.
Yes, the crematory.
The crematory, that's right, the crematory. And they're trying to con him out of getting 2 bodies. And they know that he's got a gambling problem. And they figure they can pay him off because he's always in debt. Well, it turns out when they arrive...
Sure, you took a beat in the Golden Gate this weekend.
No, I stopped the ponies, man. I stopped it all. Gamblers Anonymous, three months now.
But he offers up that, hey, there is something you can do for me. You know, Luann, who's a friend of the club, has a friend. I think her name was Emily. Correct me if I'm wrong. But he's fond of her and would like to have some relations with her. We'll leave it at that. And the club says that they'll be able to do that. And so they make a deal for these 2 bodies. So they had one that was ready, and there was another one that they had to dig up. And I don't know if you call that scene, but Half Sack gets the privilege of digging the bodies up. He's not too happy about that.
No, he's not. Yeah, that whole kind of storyline involving Skeeter and getting these bodies that they can use to stage a murder was great. And there's so many layers to it. I actually want to go back to when they first go and see Skeeter.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you caught it. It was not even the main scene. It was when Jax and Skeeter were talking. And so your focus is on them, but off to the side, right? There's a whole nother scene that goes on. And I don't know if you remember, but as Jack starts talking to Skeeter, Half Sack goes in and kind of starts nosing around.
And the supervisor crawling up my ass.
Relax, not here to make a deposit.
Actually, so let's throw.
Need 2 bodies.
I just love those details that aren't even part of the main scene and storyline. And again, if you're not paying attention, you'd completely miss it. But again, to me, it's very authentic, where this prospect, all juiced up on adrenaline, who feels like he's been disrespected by this guy, and Chibs is the one that's like, that this is the wrong time and place for that.
A natural reaction, but wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah. And then to top things off, not that it was because of this, but as you said, then Half Sack gets to dig up a body.
Yeah.
I think
he's the one that has to do that.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think it was right as they were going to go to commercial, but he's sitting there with the shovel.
You're so wrong, man. You're so wrong.
This might as well happen, right? So, I guess to close out that plot line, Jax talks to Emily, gets her to agree to sleep with him, but in exchange, Jax has to sleep with her.
Yeah, has to take one for the team.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Interesting. That is an aspect of, I guess, outlaw culture that you and I don't experience in our daily lives.
Nope.
Yeah, interesting scene though, and again, this sets up for what we'll be talking about as we move towards kind of the climax of the scene. But for now, that's going to do it for part 2. Please remember to like and subscribe. Check out our channel for more episodes, and be sure to join us for part 3, where we'll continue enjoying some Woodford Reserve, and we'll wrap up our discussion of Sons of Anarchy Season 1, Episode 2, titled Seeds. Stay with us.
We'll see you in part 3.